Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conservatish, episode 196. My name is Peter Feliciano. Find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano, on Patreon at patreon.com/conservatish. You can also follow my backup on Instagram because our white liberal overlords will eventually cancel me at Conservatish. And you can find me, wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell when you subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review, rate it, and share this with your less offendable friends. Ladies and gentlemen and Zers, it is my great privilege to have Kangmin Lee on the show. Yay! Thank you so much for coming on. And I
Thanks for
pronounced it
having
right,
me.
didn't I?
You did. Thank you. Most people. So I was in Tampa the other day for TPUSA Student Action Summit. And tons of people are coming to me. They're like, Kangmin, and I'm like, no, Kangmin, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. I didn't have to correct you.
No. It happens so many times. I had Megan McGlover on my show, who I thought was Megan for like the whole 6 months I've been following her. It's just when you follow somebody, it's not like we say our own names. You know what I mean? You just like their content, you like their videos. They talk about a million different things. You talk about a million different things, and you never hear them say their own name. So it's interesting to hear it. So anyway, besides that, let's get into more important stuff. Where can people find you?
You can find me on all social medias at the Kangmin Lee. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, also YouTube. You can just look up Kangmin Lee, but those are like my 4 main platforms. Yeah.
Awesome. Now you call yourself a ranter or a ranting person, so you're on the right show, and also a commenter, a Christian conservative. I for the last year, especially since George Floyd, I've focused on having non-white, non-liberals on my show, just to say, F you to, to identity politics. See how I cleaned it up, by the way, everybody? I said F instead of fuck. I would never say fuck. So, and then the last 2 episodes I had just white boys. I had straight white boy week on Conservatish last week. So I'm back into the fray, back into the anti-identity politics people. You're a Korean American, and you do not follow the liberal ideologies, even though they're your ally. Where along the line did you become anti-liberal ideology?
It was like my last semester of college, so fall of 2019. So it's been very, very recent. And it hasn't even been, it hasn't even been 2 years since I've become conservative. I used to be pretty liberal. I used to agree. I used to be like, yes, like BLM, fight against racism. Oh, systemic, whatever. Oh, I like socialism. Oh, gun control, get rid of guns. Why do we need guns? All the typical like liberal white college girl talking points. And it was just like, and then I was actually like my last semester of college in fall of 2019. I actually was going through a really hard time, really dark place spiritually, emotionally, mentally. But in that, I actually like got to binge watch some like conservative videos. The first moment was actually Trump, and I hated the guy. I thought he was a terrible guy. And then I saw a video of him, and it was like typical from some left leaning outlet. I forgot which one. Probably like Now This, and they're saying,
I was just gonna say,
yeah, like, oh, Trump called all Mexicans rapists. I'm like, oh, typical xenophobic Trump. And I saw this comment, and it was like, you decide for yourself whether or not Trump actually called Mexicans all this stuff. And they linked it, the full clip. And I was like, oh, maybe I should watch it. I clicked it. I watched the full clip. It was only like 5 minutes, maybe, to like take like a clip of his speech not out of context. And I was like, wow, like he really didn't call Mexicans rapists, drug dealers, whatever. And I was like, but okay, so then he clearly said people crossing the border illegally is trafficking in crime, children, drugs, all this stuff. I was like, is this true? I look it up. Goodness gracious, the situation there is terrible. Drug cartels run everything. They make millions a week. Young girls being raped, gang raped, and children being trafficked, and it was just terrible stuff going on at the border. And all the like a lot of the, if not all the fentanyl we have, like people go like, oh, George Floyd died, so sad. He definitely died from fentanyl. He had enough fentanyl in his body to choke a horse. That probably and most likely came from the southern border, right? So all these things, this is really bad. It's tearing America apart. And I'm like, shoot, have I been lied to? And then I started to listen to voices like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and Jordan Peterson and PragerU. And I was like, wow, like this actually just makes sense. I just didn't take time to take a step back and just think about what I believed in. I was just brainwashed. And that's kind of like how I got into it. And I was pretty quiet about it because I was like, frick, all my friends are liberal. And then BLM happened, George Floyd died, and I was like, okay, like every single person I know is posting a black square, raising their fist, saying like virtue signaling all over social media, getting drunk off of like feeling so righteous. And I'm like, dude, okay, I have to say something. And then I said something, and then now like nearly all my friends from high school and college hate me. But here I am.
Yeah, I mean, so my experience was similar. It's always a bad sign when you do your own research. Once you start to do your own research, you can't be a leftist anymore. You can't.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there isn't seedy crap on the right or seedy crap on the conservatives, especially with rhinos and the GOP who have been there for a long, long time. That's not to say that no cop ever does anything wrong forever and ever, amen. But that is to say, once you scratch the surface of what you're being told, you can't unsee it. And that opens up our world. Just to get corny, my red pilling was essentially Milo Yiannopoulos. Years ago when Milo, before he turned Milo, listen, baby, wherever you're at, if this gets to you, you're gay. It's okay. It's okay, Milo. Come back out of the closet. Anyway, I saw a bunch of people posting about how he was Satan and he was Hitler. And I'm like, yeah, let me do my own research. And once that thing was scratched, I could not turn back, because everything I was listening to him, I'm like, yeah, there's a couple of things I don't agree with, but for the most part, I like what this dude is saying. And and plus he was part Jewish. Like, how could he be Hitler? You know what I mean? Like, I'm a half Puerto Rican. I'm a dirty spick. Why the only people who have ever called me a Nazi are white boys? That's it. I don't understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how has, you said you had a bunch of people turn on you. Were they people, and maybe it's true. For me, I lost a couple of acquaintances, a couple of people that were semi-close, but not really. For the most part, the people that matter don't mind, and the people that mind don't matter. Did you really lose like close associates, close friends?
Yeah, I did. I mean, like I some of the guys that I like were best friends with in college, like the guys I knew and I thought would sit next, like be standing next to me during my wedding day. I don't know why they don't talk to me anymore. They don't reply to anything I send them. They haven't outspokenly said that they hate me, but I think they do, maybe. I don't know. But a lot of the friends that I had, like I hung out with casually and just like, a lot of them canceled me, a lot of them hated me, it was just like really nasty things. But number one thing always was oh, like you're a grifter. You're a grifter.
Right.
And I'm like, dude,
Right.
I am losing all my friends right now. This was before I had a platform. I was like, how am I grifting? I literally, like, you guys are all I know. How, I don't understand. I'm not getting any money out of this. This is really funny, actually. I recently did an ad for a mug. And, there's this leftist that came. I was like, oh, look at it. You revealed yourself. You're such a grifter. I'm like, well, I got to make money somehow, But besides the point, when I first started all this, I had no intention of making money or anything. I didn't think I would blow up the way that I did. And so I was doing it because I cared about the truth. And I wanted everyone to know the truth. And most of the friends that I was really close with, and these were professing Christians, right? They said the nastiest things to me. They cussed me out. They said, I don't want to see your face anymore. I'm like, I was like, I didn't want to burn bridges. I'm like, okay, hold on. Like, okay, if I really am this terrible black hating racist idiot, please tell me why. And they would never. Their always go-to was, you're not worth it. Oh, I'm not going to spend my time trying to educate you. And I'm like, dude, like, you have nothing to say then? And then those who try to educate me, right? Like, I would destroy, like, not to toot my own horn, but I would destroy them with facts and statistics and what's actually going on. And a lot of these people haven't even thought philosophically about what they're even espousing. Right. And then like, there's this one friend that I had who was really close in high school. We're not close anymore, obviously, because of all the BLM stuff. But eventually, I started destroying every single point that she's making. And then eventually, you know what she said? She said, well, you have all the stats and everything, and you may know better than me what's going on, but I'm not going to listen to you because I've read a few books about this, and therefore I just don't think it's nice that you don't think I know anything. I'm like, I'm not saying that you don't know anything, but I am giving you all these points and all these facts and all these data points and all these philosophical arguments to think about, and you can't refute it. And it's like the amount, like, no matter what, I think for a lot of people, and again, this is why as a Christian, I believe it's deeply spiritual about what's happening today, because no matter how many facts you throw at them, no matter how much information you throw at them, and no matter how much, I don't know, research, we always say do your own research, but no matter how many things that we present to them, a lot of these people are not going to let go of their preconceived notions, their worldview that has been completely predicated on this idea of victimhood and modern day progressivism. They're not going to let go of it because that's all they know. And then if you destroy that foundation for them, they're going to be completely just, they're going to lose meaning and all purpose in life. And that's hard for someone to, get rid of. So I have deep sympathy for these people, but also I'm just like, dude, like, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay. Like, I was wrong and I, moved on from it. I used to be liberal, but now I'm not. Right. So that's the name of the game. Yeah.
Right. It's rare that I'm wrong because I'm amazing. But I have had the experience. I was not to get too deep into it, but not to issue too much of a retraction. But for a couple on the last episode, one of the last episodes last week, I was talking about how Dallas Buyers Club a couple years ago made that, Hollywood made that movie, which essentially was a movie about how awful pharma is and how awful the CDC were when it came to AIDS and AZT and pushing AZT. And yet now Hollywood and everybody else on the left is yay CDC, yay pharma, hooray, and how that was hypocritical. Just to add a teensy bit of Pete sometimes can be flawed by a little bit. I will say that in doing a subsequent research, I have found that some people did appreciate what Fauci did after some of his dealings in the NIHI, I think it is. And some people didn't. Some people dislike the CDC and the FDA for what they did in the AIDS era, and some people thought, okay, they were slow, but they eventually got it right. So I will say sometimes, everybody log it down, all you Conservatish fans, Peter Feliciano can sometimes be incorrect. But outside of that, my experience has been, I think it's more than, I think you're right in that, but I think I think so, like, from the Christian standpoint, right? You can say that there are dark forces at work, right? From even the non-Christian side, fear can be labeled a dark force. And fear makes motherfuckers do some crazy shit. I know it has for me.
Oh, yeah.
When I look back at my life, I'm like, yeah, I was really afraid of, as an example, I remember being younger and I would ask a girl out and she'd reject me. And so I just get shitty with her. You know what I mean? It wasn't because I was a horrible person. It was because I was afraid. I was afraid that one rejection equaled what every woman thought about Peter Feliciano, when in reality, it was what one person thought about Peter Feliciano in this exact exchange during this exact time and my approach, and et cetera, et cetera. So fear makes people do crazy stuff. And I think it's like you said, the worldview that they're just clutching onto no matter what, but it's also the social pressure. If we don't talk about the social pressure and these kids feeling afraid and alone, unless they march along with the woke Joneses, unless they keep up with the woke Joneses, then we're missing a lot of the people that we could grab in the middle. Because there are a lot of people who I've seen online recently who even have musical careers, because I'm a musician and I'm connected to them and stuff, who have musical careers, who are like commenting or like liking a few of my posts. I'm like, I see you. I know if someone saw your like or your comments, they would be like, you're friends with Peter Feliciano. You how dare you? Where it's just, and the people I feel the most bad for, the white boys, are the white boys. At least the white women can like kowtow and like, don't get mad at me, I have a vagina. Straight white boys are alone in the cold right now, and I'm a half white boy. So like, maybe that's why I have a big heart for them. But I don't like anybody being bullied. I don't like fear running anybody's life. How could that possibly be healthy for anybody? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that I think even from a Christian standpoint, Christians, we believe that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of boldness, right? And in the Bible also says love casts out fear. So we believe that this, the anxiety, fear, depression, a lot of these things that, like you said, fuels a lot of these people embracing wokeness, it's of the devil. And when you really think about it, this also contributes to the rise in transgenderism, right? So for me, it's been really interesting to see this play out firsthand in my life, where there are so many people that I knew in high school who didn't struggle with their gender identity or didn't struggle at all with their sexual orientation. It was they were just normal, straight.
Right.
They didn't have any sort of gender dysphoria. They were fine. And maybe I didn't know about it, maybe, but I highly doubt it. They're fine. They didn't exhibit any sort of, you know, any
Yeah.
signs and symptoms that they'd be actually suffering through gender dysphoria. But then, like, all of a sudden, I see all over my newsfeed all the time. Hi, I'm demisexual now. Hi, I'm pansexual now. Hi, and then all these people are like, oh, I'm like bisexual now. Oh, I'm, whatever, all these different sexualities and genders. And for me, growing up, it was always like, okay, they're straight, and then there was gay, and then that's it. But then now it's because culture today, largely with all the corporations, academia, media, big tech, every single institution of power in this country celebrates LGBTQ. A lot of, especially vulnerable and impressionable kids who feel lonely with the advent of social media, right? You go on social media, it's supposed to make us connected, but actually makes people more distant because they see other people hanging out there like, frick, like I have no friends. Oh, look at all these people. They're so perfect on social media. So a lot of them have anxiety, depression, a lot of insecurities. And these kids are vulnerable and impressionable. And what this culture does is it offers them, hey, if you identify as this, you get to belong to a community. You get to belong to the LGBTQIA plus, whatever. They're adding a bunch of stuff now, and I can't
Right.
keep up anymore. But
Right.
and then they embrace you, and then so what happens as a result is after you come out of the closet of whatever sexuality, whatever or gender or whatever, what happens is people not only affirm you and embrace you, but they glorify you.
Mm.
Likes, shares, comments. Oh, queen, yes, you did it. And for a lot of kids, this is what they've always wanted. And so that's why, Abigail Schreier writes about this in her book, but it's become a social contagion where gender dysphoria has been something that genuinely affected a lot of men in the past 100 years with all the scientific literature that we have. But now it's primarily affecting women. In the same way, I'm sure with you growing up, and as with me too, growing up, I was always taught in health class that it was women who primarily struggled with bulimia, anorexia, all these body disorders because they felt a lot of sense of shame and body issues, body image issues, and now it's translated into gender identity. So whatever identity they can identify as, so that they can feel like they belong and they're accepted and they're glorified by culture. So it's actually really, really sad as what you're seeing right now, because of course, who's driving all this is all these nefarious actors in Hollywood, in mainstream media, in academia, in all these massive corporations, in Wall Street, in big tech. They're all driving this, and they're literally they're profiting off of you know the extortion and exploitation of young kids, and causing them to have mental health problems, and just for a lot of confusion, and that's not healthy for kids. And for me, that's just been really, really sad to see, but that kind of social pressure be applied to
Right.
really destroy the fabric of our society.
Right. Now, I also want to put a caveat in there, everybody who's listening, because remember, too often people who do, because I do have some liberals who listen to my show. God bless their hearts. I don't know how, but I do want to throw in that caveat that this is not Kangmin saying, or I'm saying, because I'm agreeing with him. This is not us saying we dislike or hate trans people. Like I know some, and I've had a couple on my show, legit ass trans people. One of them is offensive tranny. Everybody go look him up. These are people who have genuine body dysmorphia, who were not born in the right body, who struggled with it for years. I know. My friend Just Morgan, who's a comedian in San Francisco, felt like she was in the wrong body for her entire fucking life. wanted to commit suicide over it. This is some deep issues, and then eventually got the therapy, got the this, did the whole works. What's happening now? So don't take our words that we're saying that means that we dislike trans people. We're saying a lot of these kids who don't know no better are being confused, and I do it's hard not to, because I know that the gas in the engine, I don't know if is malevolence, right? I think the people driving the car and pushing the pedal down, that's probably malevolence. I'm talking, like you're saying, the dark forces or the left or the politicians, media, et cetera, et cetera. But the gas in that tank is white guilt. The gas in that tank is male guilt. The gas in that tank is vindictive females who feel like they don't have a home, right? If we all took away their gas, if we took away their power, they would push the pedal down and the car wouldn't go, and we wouldn't have the destruction. Am I making sense with this analogy? I'm saying, I don't know if what's worse, the malevolence or the ignorance. You know what I mean? What do you think to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that because what's been happening in our society is like a lot of conservatives and just regular Americans, right? We've been living life. I've not been political my whole life, and I've like, wow, I love life, I think that's the case for most Americans, where you just wanted to, take care of your family, get a job, provide for your family, and then hopefully your job is also fulfilling. You move up in the ladder, you move to a different company, you just live life, go on vacation, travel, experience the world, all these things. Just like, okay, people were just trying to live their life. Right. And then suddenly in the past 10 years, the talks of racism shot up, feminism shot up, LGBTQ shot up, everything shot up, right? And this was being pushed by, again, all these, like, the bureaucratic ruling elite in our society, but not only in our society, around the world, right? You have literally Chinese propaganda machines saying US is so racist. I'm like, what the freak? You guys are literally killing off Muslims in your country. Yeah, please don't lecture us. But obviously, it's a lot of these people pushing this nonsense. Why? It's to divide us, right? It's to divide us. It's to get us, feeling it's in a constant state of fear. That's what's happening with COVID, right? Fear, anxiety, divisiveness, just a lot of bitterness, resentment, all this stuff. You boil all of this, right? Because we're all like frogs boiling in a pot very slowly, but they're boiling it. And right now, America and just the West in general has really gotten to a boiling point. And then what happens as a result of this? You've seen this in every single communist country. You boil the population to a point where you like blame a certain group of people. And it's like, it's their fault that you feel this way. It's their fault that you don't have food on the table. It's your fault that, let's say, for example, if you're a black person, it's like, oh, like you didn't get the job over a white person. Oh, it's the white person's fault because they had designed a system to keep you down. And then, for someone who's very vulnerable and pissed off they didn't get the job, they were like, what the frick, man? Of course, yeah, what the heck? Screw white people. And this is exactly what they did in North Korea. This is what they did in China and Russia and everything, where they, for example, in North Korea, they said, if you are a descendant of landowners, you are tainted with sin. You are a descendant of oppressors. So therefore, we must oppress you today in order to, right past wrongs. What are they saying about white people today? Oh, you are descendant of white people who own slaves. Therefore, and most white people in our country today are not descendants of slave owners, by the way. But, they say, oh, because of your association with whiteness, you are tainted with sin. Therefore, we must discriminate against you. And you're the reason why we have all these problems in this country. And then what happens as a result? We see it literally in South Africa happening this year. There are literal videos of black people taking whips and whipping white people. I'm like, am I back in the 1700s? But then just the skin colors are reversed. What is going on? And that's exactly what these, nefarious actors in the ruling establishment, not only in America, but pushed by globalist elites, are pushing, so that why? They can solidify their power and they enrich themselves and their buddies, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we always want more power. We want more control. We want to be the big man, and we want more money and live lavishly. That's just humanity. History doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes, and every single person who's in power always struggled with this, right? So that's what's going on. Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about the Stop Asian Hate, because that was a big flare up a couple of months ago, and I actually have eyes, so I saw that it was mostly black people assaulting you guys, and yet we all made believe that look, finally, thank God, we found one white guy with a gun. I think it was actually in Atlanta where you're at. So many stories change every 5 seconds. Finally, we found a white guy with a gun who killed a couple of Asian women, even though there were also some Mexicans and white people killed in that shooting. But he killed, and he also said it wasn't racially motivated. But thank God, we found a white guy who killed Asians. So now we can say, is that hashtag Stop Asian Hate? Nah, bro, it was black people.
Yeah.
What was your experience?
Absolutely. Oh, that's actually kind of where I blew up. Really, that was my moment of whoa, everyone's, because in the same way a lot of people were looking for black voices during when George Floyd died. A lot of people were looking for Asian voices during that time, and it was just so stupid because I was I'm very plugged into the Asian community because I grew up with a lot of Asians, and in college I only really hung out with Asians. I saw this all the time being, this Stop Asian Hate movement was a thing throughout COVID. Right. It was a thing throughout COVID. But, obviously no media coverage. Why? Because it wasn't convenient to their narrative, because like you said, it was mostly Black and Latino people attacking Asians. And so, I remember seeing all that and throughout the year, and I was like, oh, it's not, they kept blaming Trump. And I was like, stop. Black thugs in inner cities are not getting inspired by Tucker Carlson and Trump at rallies. No, I don't know where this conflation is coming from. And so I said that, and a lot of Asians hated me for that. But when the Atlanta shooting happened, just like you said, it was the chance for the media to say, yes, a white person finally did it. So you notice the coverage of it. They always said 6 Asians died. 8 people died, 6 of which were Asian. It's what about the white people, man? What about that? Literally people were saying that whiteness and white people are terrorists. They're saying whiteness is terrorism. I'm like, there are 2 people who are white who literally were shot to death. And you're saying to their grieving families that they don't matter. Why? Because of their skin color? It's absolutely insane. No, it's insane. And it's not only hilariously stupid, but it's also terrible. It's horrific. You don't go up to someone who lost their family member to a shooting and go your skin color is the reason why. That's it's so stupid. But my heart, I broke for it because as a Korean, I'm well, I love Koreans, and 4 Koreans died during that shooting. I was sad. I was like, man, this sucks. No one should be the victim of a mass shooting from a psychopath who struggled with sexual desires or whatever. But, they use this as a chance to victimize Asians, because throughout this whole past 5 years where critical race theory and a lot of this woke nonsense has been really rising in academia, they always categorized Asians as white adjacent. Why? Because mostly East and South Asians, they always use Southeast Asians as an exception because they actually don't make as much money. But South Asians like Indians, Pakistani Americans, and then, East Asians like Japanese, Chinese, Japanese Americans, we make up our median household income is higher on average than white people, right? So then they can't say that we're discriminated against, right? Because for them, disparities equal discrimination. That's how they say. That's how they conclude that Black people are oppressed by white people. So I'm like, so then when Asians come into the fray, right? It's well, we're an inconvenient minority. My friend Kenny Xu wrote a book about this. We're the inconvenient minority where we completely destroy the narrative of the left. And so, but then they saw this Atlanta shooting. They're like, finally, we can victimize Asians. And then a lot of Asians were like, oh, I'm such a victim of white supremacy. And I'm like, no, you're not. It's so stupid. No, they're saying, oh, all these Asian hate crimes, COVID is because, Trump said China virus or Kung flu or Wu flu. And I'm like, dude, that's funny. I say China virus all the time. I say Kung flu. I just whatever. But they were saying, oh, the rise in Asian hate crimes is because of white supremacy. And then you would see all these videos, and nearly all of them are Black people in inner cities attacking vulnerable Asians. Okay, it's not white people, then what? literally all these leftists, all these media pundits were bending over backwards to say white supremacy. Actually, you know, black people are attacking Asians in the streets. It's because of white supremacy. I'm like, what? Like, and they're saying it's because there's a system of white supremacy embedded into everything in this country. And so white supremacy is fueling black people to attack Asians. And for me, you just look at that. You hear what they're saying. And they're literally saying that black people, because of the color of their skin, they have no personal agency and they don't know how to think for themselves. And they are just still slaves to the whims of these boogeyman white supremacists that live in these systems. That is racist. That is literally the same ideology of slave owners 400 years ago where they said black people, they don't know how to think. They have no personal agency. You can't do anything except for us white slave owners telling you what to do. I'm like, how do people not understand this? How do people not see this? It's so stupid. It's so racist. It's so divisive. And that's why I spoke out. I went viral on woke Asian Twitter and on TikTok and Instagram, and a lot of Asians came and attacked me. They're like, "Oh, look at you! You're such a, you're kiss up to white people. Oh, you're licking the boots of the white supremacists." I'm like, dude, honestly, like, I haven't met a single white supremacist in my life, but you guys are so annoying and racist towards me. Shut up, because you guys are the ones. Literal leftists came after me and called me all these racial slurs. Keep in mind, I don't really care because I always said racial slurs growing up.
Right.
But they call me racial slurs. I'm just looking at them. I'm just like, man, I just wish you guys can see the hypocrisy. It just boggles my mind how hypocritical these people are, where they cry about racism, and the moment where you deviate from their narrative, they yell in your face all these racial slurs. This is really funny. This one insult I got, I thought it was hilarious. They call me Uncle Chew. Because they call black people, they're like, they call him Uncle Tom, right? And so I'm like the Asian version. They're like, oh, look at this Uncle Chew. And I was like, that's pretty funny. I'm gonna give you that.
Mark Hughes, who I met you through, Uncle Tomas is what he called it. Uncle Tomas when it's a Latino doing it. Or I'm sorry, Latinx. Another side thing, no Latin person ever, unless it's a female with a big FUPA. Have you noticed? I don't know if you know this. The more into social justice warriorism that a woman is, the larger her FUPA. It's
absolutely.
Weird math. It's a science thing. I don't know what physics this. I don't. We'll email Darwin, but geez, that's an interesting thing. That the more unfuckable they are, and the more hard on themselves, and the more they stuff their faces with food and this and that and blah blah, and just don't want to be in the present moment, the more vindictive they are. Oh my God, it's so interesting. Another quick thing, just as a side note before I forget, and I think I've mentioned this on my show, but just as a quick side note, feminists, listen, if you're worried about if discrimination is the only explanation for disparity, then we need to make sure that there are more women construction workers. Okay, so just so you know, there's almost no women construction workers. So next time you want to be, instead of going for STEM, ladies, instead of going for STEM, you need to go for construction workers. Okay. Also, you need to give up more of your jobs because there's more. I think it's 90% of nursing is females. So you obviously have to give up your job because remember, that's the mature way to live. You fucking idiots, is to live by even Stevens. Everything needs to be even Stevens. You stupid fuck. If it was even Stevens, then black people would only be 13 to 14% of our TV shows. If everything needed to be even Stevens, because they're 13% of the population. Other side note regarding representation, and I swear I'll move on from this. Black people are 13% of the population, and yet 50+% of murders. So even if, that's literally 4 times what it should be. So keep, or 3.5, 4 times what it should be. So just keep that in mind next time you're like, oh, white supremacy did it. Why are black people killing black people in huge numbers, mostly in Chicago and major cities? Do your own research. Okay. Now, I also wanted to bring this up. So you moved to Atlanta, but you were in Minneapolis beforehand. When exactly was the date you moved out of Minneapolis?
I moved out the end of April.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you surf through the craziness of last year in Minneapolis?
No. So I got there right after George Floyd died. So I got there when the riots slowed down in Minneapolis, but I was there for when Dante Wright died in Brooklyn Center. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
Dante Wright, right outside of Minneapolis in a town called Brooklyn Center. He was shot by a cop and he died, and there were mass protests there. And so I was there for that. Obviously, I stayed home, but it was like 5 minutes away from where I lived. And I was just like, I saw the wreckage the morning after, and I'm like, dang, like it hits different when you see the actual destruction. I also, driving through Minneapolis after the riots, like I've seen Wells Fargo buildings just banks just torn to the ground, all these small businesses just burned to the ground in Minneapolis. I'm like, wow, like BLM is a terrorist organization, like straight up. Like there's no way to describe it. Domestic terrorism, literally, in its definition, is violent extremism with a political, religious, ethnic, whatever motive. It's BLM is a domestic terror organization. I don't know how else to describe it.
Right.
Dude, people need to see the destruction like firsthand. It really shakes you up, man. It's like, frick. Like if I was there, I would have died. Like shoot. So yeah, but yeah, I moved out. And I wasn't there for like when George Floyd first died, because I probably would have. Well, Minnesota is a huge state, and the suburbs are really big. It was really just in the heart of Minneapolis where a lot of things burned down. But yeah, it was really funny. I when I first got there, like all these businesses, boarded up, like all the wood. They're just like scared they're gonna be another riot.
Yeah. Shout out to small businesses, by the way. New York City just put, demon ass de Blasio just put out that he's going to require vaccine cards to show your vaccine card to get into indoor dining, entertainment, or gyms indoor. So just so you know, everybody, that means that small business who are already decimated by the pandemic, small businesses who are just trying to, especially restaurants, trying to claw their way out of the sewage of that was created, are now going to, even if they have the funds, will now have to pay somebody to be at the door to check vaccines. So obviously the ones who are smaller, who can't afford that, will again have to be shut down. So good job. Leftists really are the workers' party, you stupid idiots. They're not the workers' party. Let's just also point out the most social justice warriors, full-on blue hairs, don't have a job anyway. You're not the workers. You're not the workers. You're not the proletariat. You're the fucking bourgeois. You white piece of shit. All right, sorry. So I'm a ranter too, as you can tell, Mr. Lee. So your experience was you got out of there. How has the transition been to the South?
Oh, it's been great. So, I mean, outside of the city, Minnesota is super red. Like, if you just drive out of the suburbs and just everywhere, you just see Trump flags everywhere, American flags everywhere. It's the same thing here. You see a lot of American flags, and it's pretty conservative, even in the suburbs. Largely, the further away you get from Atlanta, the more red it gets. So most people that I've met and I've just, been just like encountering in everyday life have been pretty conservative. But of course, like, you have those super, super libs. And whenever I meet an Asian down here, of course they're lib. They're such a lib. They're like, there's this one time I started talking about how, I don't know if you heard the story about We Spot in LA, where there's a grown man who went into the girls section. And obviously that's not okay, where you have, grown men just simply identifying as trans, and then they get to prey on young girls, and young girls have to be exposed to that. It's just really not okay.
Oh yeah, that was the not manicure. That was the waxing spot, right?
The Korean spa in LA.
Okay, Korean spa. Okay.
Yeah, I used to go there all the time, and I was like, wow, even the spa that I used to go to all the time has become politicized. And I don't know why that came up in a conversation with this Asian college student, and he was like, "Yeah, man, F Trump, he's the reason." I'm like, "What? Like what?" And it's just so many of these Asians, especially these like Asian Christians who are my age, they're so brainwashed. They have no idea what they're talking about. There's a reason why Asians aged 18 to 29, 86% of them voted for Biden in this past election. They're all brainwashed, and they're all like, there's a lot of reason to it, but it's just so annoying because whenever I meet an Asian around my age, I automatically almost already know that they're liberal, and I'm like, break, man. Like, I don't have time to deal with this crap.
What if it's this? I mean, let's dissect this a little bit, because what if it's this? I like getting down to the root of whatever the, instead of the symptom on top, what's the disease underneath? Obviously, we know, I believe, with white people, it's white guilt, right? Asians, I don't think it's Asian guilt. I think maybe what it might be is that they're still second generation, maybe third generation, and they're trying to subconsciously distance themselves from the respect for authority. They're trying to distance themselves for their grandparents or their parents' love for the country and hardworking, mentality, and put your head down and don't get involved in stuff. Because that's really what Asians. That's why Asians became so, I believe, became so rich and self-sufficient, is because they didn't get involved in all this other. Let these white and black people fight it out. I'm going to have my head down and I'll make money. I'm going to work 13, 14, 15, 17-hour days. I'm going to buy a business and I'm going to still work 17, 20-hour days. And then now I'm going to give that to my son, and he's going to, like they worked. They weren't bothered by all this stuff. So maybe part of it is a subconscious desire for the new generation to pull back and rebel against their older generation. That's maybe one idea. What do you think the other reasons are?
I think there's a lot of reasons. And I think the millennial and Gen Z Asians have embraced the worst parts of Asian culture and have rejected the best parts. And what I mean by that is that they embrace the blind, I guess, blind submission to authority and blind confirmation to those around them, the collective, right? So
blind,
for example,
blind because their eyes are smaller.
Yeah, blind because their eyes are small.
Sorry, continue. I love being a horrible man. I love it.
Just dental floss, just blinded. Anyways, it's because if you looked at even today, right? So Bill de Blasio, announced his vaccination passports, and if you look at the demographics, right, the highest percentage racial demographic group that has been vaccinated are Asians. If you walk around, even in Georgia, right, no one's wearing masks. The only people wearing masks, Asians. And it's like they blindly follow it because they would rather have safety, security, and like conformity than unnecessary confrontation. That's why a lot of Koreans, especially, are super passive aggressive, and you'll see this all the time. And that's why there's so many problems in relationships. But they're not very confrontational, and so there's this really bad blind, submission to authority, where they don't even question authority, and then also at the same time they conform to society around them. So BLM's hot, COVID, whatever regulations, and guidelines, masking up, getting the vaccine, that's hot. Right. Feminism, that's hot. Gender ideology, that's hot. Critical race theory, that's hot. All these things, super hot. So they're like, okay, I'm just going to conform and just not, just be passive and just, go along with it. So that's the worst parts they embrace. And then they reject the best parts, which include discipline, hard work, meritocracy, right? So, and then they also, but they do embrace education. But then here's the thing. So then there's a lot of things that play into this, but one of the biggest things is that, so a lot of the Gen Z and millennial Asians in this country are second generation. So their parents came here, right? So I'm like 1.5 because I was born in Korea, but I moved here when I was really young. But I was also raised here. And unfortunately for most of these these families, there's a language barrier. So then you see Asian parents talking to their kids in their native tongue, and then their kids talking with them in English. So then they can't communicate, and they can't talk about really deep stuff like virtue, like morals, like ethics, like philosophy, like theology, all these things that shape everyone's worldview. They can't talk about it with their kids because their kids just don't understand, right? And then so there's this rift. There's a generational gap right there where parents are supposed to be the ones instilling virtue and indoctrinating in a good way, good values into their children, but they're not able to do that because there's a language barrier. And then on top of that, Asians who come into this country, they work hard. Like you said, they work their ass off, like 13, 15-hour days just to make life better for their kids. If you talk to any one of these Asian parents who immigrated, they're always like, I just wanted a better life for my family and better life for my kids. I wanted to send them to a good school, all these things, right? So then all these Asian kids who grew up not really knowing what their parents had to struggle and sacrifice for them, they're the inheritance. They have the inheritance of their parents' hard work. So they're spoiled. They're spoiled. They don't know what they have. They don't know how hard it was for their, especially a lot of Chinese American Gen Z and millennials who a lot of their parents and their grandparents fled Maoist China to come here and find freedom. And then they don't know what that looks like. They're like, oh, whatever. Look at these Chinese people so old. They don't understand anything. And then they do their own thing. And also because Asians value education, right? So parents send them all to school. They're like, college, 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 college. Not knowing that colleges today have become liberal indoctrination centers. So then not having virtues instilled to them, right? And so then if they don't get it in the house, they're going to get it from the world at the outside. That society will tell them what to believe, what to think, and what is good and what is bad. So then they go to college and they're like, wow, I'm going to make friends. I'm going to make a life for myself. And all their kids, all their friends, all the professors, school administration, everything, BLM, BLM, BLM. They're like, okay, BLM, BLM. And it's so a lot of these things really play into it. And then on top of that, a lot of Asians are really buying into the progressive ideal of just completely abandoning tradition. And a lot of Asian culture, the reason why we've succeeded is because we value tradition, like the nuclear family, like discipline, hard work, like traditional gender roles and all those things. And then so they're all abandoning that because, again, they're being indoctrinated by colleges, those around them, corporations, everything. So I know that was a lot, but those are like a lot of reasons that kind of encompass why so many Asians my age and younger tend to be super, super liberal, while you see a lot of Asian immigrants, they are very, very conservative. And if they vote Democrat, it's because they're blind and they don't know what they're doing. But most of them are very, very socially conservative.
Yeah, it's concerning. It's also concerning. I mean, by the way, just as a side note, everybody, like I said, the only people who have ever really called me Nazis are white boys. But I've also had the experience of when I posted, I had Sari Kim. Do you know Sari Kim down in, she ran for Congress in Texas a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
I had her on my show. And she was talking about, mostly a lot of Trump talking points. I liked her. We had a great conversation. She didn't end up winning her district, that we know of anyway. Elections are totally cool. All right. But when I posted episodes when I posted episode clips on TikTok, I got a ton of blank Chinese anger. We talked a lot about how China is awful, and I got a lot of, and some of it might be legit, but I think a lot of it was just TikTok is Chinese owned, and so they're fine with all kinds of horrendous shit, that government. And so they just put probably a bunch of bots up to talk bad about our clips and say, no, China's great. I actually went there a couple of years ago, and that same thing that you just said is very prevalent over there. It's not that by blood Chinese people are subservient. I believe it's been bred that way. Just like in one generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, Hong Kong was fighting in the streets for their freedom, and they got smacked down. But imagine if they didn't have that Hong Kong life and that good English hello West life, a part of their existence. Chinese people, as kind and considerate and on an individual basis. I only spent a week there, so what do I know? But my experience was pretty great with the individuals. But there's this subservient. I just trust the government. Screw it. I have my head down. I'm happy to be just a cog in the clock of the Chinese whatever. I'm going to be the best dishwasher. I'm going to be the best taxi driver. I'm going to be the best nothing. I'm not going to care. I might try to get my kids up to the next level maybe in one generation, but I certainly can't get up. And my kids probably can't get up high. It's a caste system. It's a class system. And there is that weird subservience in there. And I think I think it's bred. I don't think it's blood. Am I saying it right? Yeah, I think it's nurture, not nature. Do you know what I'm saying? and it's a really scary thing when you look at the individual people, the citizens in China, of how that can happen pretty easily, pretty quickly. You know what I mean? And how, because even in a generation or two, Hong Kong split and are like, I love that clip of that guy, Trump, don't trust China. China is asshole. I love that one. Oh man. What do we do? What do we do? What are some ideas besides us having this lovely conversation, besides us getting and posting our things on Twitter? Because eventually the white liberals at Twitter and Instagram are all, they know what's best for us. White liberals always know what's best for everybody. So they're going to take us off. But in the meantime, we're going to have these conversations. We're going to keep saying what we need. You're going to keep putting videos up on YouTube. Everybody go click and subscribe to Kangmin Lee. But what else can we do to move this back towards where it needs to be?
So I see a lot of problems with conservatives, Christians, and just anti-woke, anti-leftist people in general. They, vote for, whoever is anti all of that nonsense, right? So that tends to be Republicans, although I really don't like the GOP. They're spineless, feckless losers, and they don't do anything. All they are, they're just like a speed bump for the Democrats. But a lot of people think like, if I just take care of my home, everything will be okay because I can't control the outside world, right? But have you watched the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, right? So Mel Gibson's whole thing, right, after he, fought as a soldier, he has a family, and then they're trying to enlist him in the colonial army. And then he says, no, I'm just going to take care of my family. Screw you guys, right? And then what happens as a result? The war comes to his doorstep. Literally, so then, this is not historically accurate, but for the sake of the argument, the Redcoats kill his son, burn his house down, and he has to fight, because it's come to him. And then so it's a very important lesson for all of us to learn, because we see this happen in society and has happened in many countries and many nations in the past, where everyone was like, you know what, it's okay. Nazi Germany, they're rounding up killing Jews, but it's okay. I'm just going to, tend to my own thing. And then the moment they hear you, the Secret Service, secret police, they hear you, the Gestapo, they hear you say anything bad about Hitler, straight to concentration camp, right? And kids are being indoctrinated in schools, and then they overhear their parents talking bad about the Nazi German party. What happens? Instantly hung. This idea that we can just, put our heads down, bury our heads in the sand, and just take care of like our little bubble. It has merit, because you need to change your home, and change happens in the home. But then if you just only care for your family and only care for your immediate community, and you're not paying attention to what's going on in a national and global scale, especially with how connected we are today with all these devices, you're screwed. I'm sorry, but you're screwed. Literally. Like, they will come for you. Peace is an illusion. It's all an illusion. We're so spoiled in this generation where we have everything. We can just go drive 5 minutes to a local Kroger's and pick up some bread. But that's all an illusion. Someone had to make that. Someone had to die for your freedoms. Someone had to fight for that, right? And so what I say is the fight is always twofold. One, it's in the home, but it's also in the public. So, take care of your home. Jordan Peterson says is like, if you don't even have your home in order, you're not going to be able to get the world in order, because if your home's not in order, then the change that you want to see in the world, it's going to be also chaos, right? That's why you see a lot of these liberals who don't have their homes in order. They don't have families, or they don't have children to take care of. And then they think they can change the world, and they're just destroying it. So first, take care of the home, take care of your immediate community, love them. Because again, 74 million people voted for Trump. 74 million. I don't believe it, but 74 million. And then, so if each person who voted for Trump, they all voted for Trump for a reason, right? But if each person who voted for Trump converted one person, red-pilled one person in their life, right? Which just switch the whole voter base and not have Democrats rule anymore, right? So, even small, changing your home, your local community, investing in that goes such a long way. At the same time, we can't have our heads buried in the sand and just be like, okay, I'm just going to focus on our home. Who cares about what happens in the school board, what happens in our education system, what happens in the government? I don't care, whatever, I can't control that. You can control that. Because we still have a constitution, although it's being ripped apart and torn to shreds right now. We still have a constitution where we, the people, hold the power. The government serves us. So if we, the people, mobilize and all collectively we say, no to vaccine mandates, to critical race theory, to wokeism, we say no to all these things, then we will win. We just have to be out there. See, one of the biggest things that really frustrated me when I first started to get canceled with all my friends, I used to get a lot of private messages from people who knew me. They're like, hey,
Yes.
like, I love what you do, but I can't say anything because I'll get canceled too. And I'm like, what the frick, man? If all of you guys said something, then I wouldn't be the only one taking all the arrows and bullets. Because literally what's happening right now, all these conservatives are saying, oh, like pushing people like you and me in the forefront like a shield. They're like, take all the arrows. But I support you. And they're like,
Right.
take all the arrows. And they're using us as shields. But I'm like, what if we all collectively stood in the line? We're like, no. Well, they can't do anything. They can't cancel us, right? And so we have to be public. We have to speak out. I have deep sympathy for people who have family to take care of, and they risk losing. I risk losing my job every day. I have a day job. I risk losing my job every day. But I believe that the truth is important. I really do believe we've reached a boiling point in this country where we, as regular Americans, can't sit back and sit still and not do anything, because really our country is in imbalance right now. And if we don't fight now, we'll never get our freedoms back. We'll never get our country back. So that's all to say. Fight hard and fight in your local communities, in your homes, in your churches, and wherever. And also fight publicly. Get your voice out there so that people know, corporations know, your representatives, politicians, everyone knows that their ideas and their woke ideologies and progressive nonsense is not as popular as they think it is.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience many, many times. Little private messages, little things like that. Mark Hughes also brought up another good idea. Okay, scared boys and girls who are afraid to. I mean, I had a couple of people like, you can come on my show. Just as a quick side note, everybody, you can always come on my show to come out. Just come out of the closet. It's okay. And obviously the gay closet, but I mean the non-liberal closet. It's a big tent, boys and girls. It's a big tent. I know lots of people who are on the non-liberal side who I disagree with on some things. The bottom line is that we've got bigger fish to fry. We've got bigger fish to fry. Mainly, the main one for me, election. Main one for me is election. If 51% legitimately voted for dumb Biden, fine. I disagree with it wholeheartedly, and I'll vocalize that. But if it wasn't legit, that makes the difference. That makes the make or the break, doesn't it, everybody? Because if I mean, that's what this whole thing is about, man. So all the audits going on in Arizona and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and Georgia, all that stuff going on. We need transparency. If anybody wants to come on my show to come out as a non-liberal, you are welcome on my show. If you're afraid that white people will go, ooh, a bad white person, I'm a Puerto Rican. Okay, just put me out front. I'm the dirty Latinx who will break down there. I'll use my identity politics for good. I don't care. Anyway, so yeah, let's start wrapping up. Thank you very much for coming on. This has been a great conversation. Besides going forward on like a call to action, what stuff do you have coming up? Because I know you just moved and you've got more stuff coming up onto your YouTube. Is there any regular shows people can when they find you on Twitter, find you on YouTube? What like, entice the people?
Yeah, so I've been traveling a lot, and so I haven't really been able to do it. And again, I have a day job, and on top of that, I actually am a wedding videographer and photographer, so I'm really behind on those to my clients. So I've been working on that, but hopefully by mid-August, I'll be able to have all that wrapped up and start producing more videos. Because again, when I first started all of this, I used to just be like about owning the libs. I was like, oh, I just want to own the libs. But then I started to realize like you said, there are bigger fish to fry, and there's so much at stake. And one of the biggest things that we can use as a weapon is information. And so definitely focusing more on YouTube content, just a little more long form content, just to really deep dive into deeper topics and just break down complex ideas. And so, yeah, I'll be bringing back. I haven't really posted on YouTube for like over a month and a half, but I'll be bringing that back and posting something probably in the next few weeks. I have a lot planned out. I have a lot of like YouTube scripts, written out, and basically a lot of them are just like compilations of a lot of my tweets. I just have to put it into video. But yeah, I do have some fun stuff coming up, and probably we'll get some fun guests on as well, and to get some content going. But yeah, that's what I have coming up. Yeah.
Awesome. And as one last side note, I think it's pretty awesome that the majority of us have main side gigs or main gigs. I'm do this, and I'm also a musician. So you, as an example, wedding videographer, wedding photographer, when there are, because I've got a friend who wants to, he's in a similar business, and he's afraid to kind of breach the subject of coming on my show, because he's like, I don't want to lose business. I don't want to lose. Well, guess what? When someone in the Atlanta area needs a videographer who's not going to be all so woke that they can reach out to Kangmin Lee. They can reach out to my friend. When someone needs a wedding singer who's not going to be like, oh, are there the correct amount of Black people at this wedding? I'm your guy. Give me money, because let's support all of each other. Let's you know what I mean? Like, enough people, we may not have, for some damn reason, a good social media platform yet on the non-liberal side. Hello, dum-dums. But we, at least on our side jobs, we can support each other. We can do the My Pillow thing. We can, Goya went last year when they were like, cancel Goya. Dum-dums. You have no idea who Latino people are. We put money on Goya, okay? Goya got that cash now, okay? So don't be fooling around. We support each other, right? And so keep that in mind, everybody, too. Support each other's day jobs también. Todo bien? Todo bien. Okay. Again, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Please plug your stuff one more time.
Yeah. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the Kangmin Lee, and then also on YouTube, just look up my name, Kangmin Lee. You'll find me.
Great. And thank you again. And everybody, wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe, rate it, review it, share it with your less offendable friends. Send me money. Hey, if you can't support me in the public, Venmo me. I don't care. Venmo me, Peter-Feliciano. Just give me cash. I don't care. Send me a lot of Cogwin's Christian fans. Please cover your ears. Hey, if you need to just send me titty pictures, I'm fine with that. Whatever payment you can. I actually have had a few fans. Anyway, God bless you, girls. Anyway, you can support this podcast at patreon.com/Conservatish. I've got new music coming out, everybody. An original song that is actually quite beautiful and slow. That's going to be, I believe, first week of September. So keep your eyes open for that. And again, thank you so much, Kangmin Lee, for coming on. I'll go ahead and stop.
Yeah, absolutely.